All right, let's get in this. So I asked you last week, or not last week, the week before, when I made this last video about 126. I ended it with, where did Shem, I said Seth, so I'm correcting that. Where did Shem get his uncorrupted wife? Most of you are like, I've never even asked that question. I never even thought about asking that question. That's fine. I get it. But it's kind of important because when it says all were corrupt, how many is all? Well, it specifies that Noah was perfect in his generation, so that means him and his sons were not corrupt. They weren't abominable. But anyways, so those of you who say that this Elohim is the Father, and this Yahuwah Elohim is the formal name of the Father, this Elohard, y'all call Yahweh. I'm going to show y'all something. You shall say to Pharaoh, thus said your Yahweh or Elohard or Yisrael is my son, my firstborn. Well, if y'all say this is the Father, then you're going to have to come up with some sort of spiritual aspect of this. Something, relating to the covenant. So Noah gets a covenant. We'll look at that in a minute. So, you know, but when you know that that's the son that gave the breath of lives, and you know that Yisrael is a direct descendant of the one and only breath of lives that was given, well, you can kind of understand what my firstborn is, my son, as opposed to thinking this is the father. And now all of a sudden you got a little confusion because you know that the son is Yahusha or your Yeshua or your Jesus. You're in contradiction here if you say this is the Father. That's kind of all I really wanted to do, was kind of show you that, hey, there's a contradiction that exists, and I just want y'all to see it for a minute, please. And that contradiction is, you say this is the Father. John 1:1 says this is the Word, and the Word became flesh. None came through him. None came to be that didn't come through him. I tell you that this is Emmanuel, Elohim, with us. So this is the Father, the omnipresent Ruach, the invisible El, who works through his form, the Son. All things are created by and through. That's who this is. But here's what's pretty cool. It says, these are the births of the heavens and the earth when they were created. We know that he's just rested from his creation, from all his work, and it was very good. In the day that Yahuwah Elohim made earth and heavens. Well, I don't know if you can, because I haven't dove into it, but what if that's really speaking about heaven on earth, which is really the garden? So it's another place that the image and form that the Father works through, the mediator of all things, to Elohim, the Father, Yahuwah. This is, when you know this is the Father, then you can understand Genesis 19, where it says Yahuwah, the Son, called down fire and brimstone on Sedum and Amor from Yahuwah in the heavens, which is actually this way, but still, what I'm getting at is, when you take that as the Father, then you've got them split, and there is no split in them. They are one Echad. It's the Son who went to Sedum and Amor after having a meal and hanging out with Abraham, and then he passed judgment, and then fire and brimstone was rained down. So no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up. Wait a minute. Well, the sun, moon, and stars was set on day 4. If it took all 1,000 years to do that, there was still 3,000 years of sun, moon, and stars. Nothing came up. He just made a barren land, but then said, I give you everything of food. No, this is a new creation, the garden. For Yahuwah Elohim had not sent rain on the earth. in the garden, and there was no man to till. Or this is to work or keep or tend, not necessarily break it up, the ground. So, but a mist went up from the earth and watered the entire surface of the ground. And you say, well, they didn't know what rain was when Noah told them it was going to flood. I agree. They had no idea. But just because he done it in the garden doesn't mean that it hadn't been going on. You can't make this the same creation as the other. It's not in the same order. It's a totally different creation. We've got the breath of lives, a direct lineage straight out of the mouth of Yahuwah, the Son. That's why he says they are his son. Look here, in Yahuwah Elohim formed the man out of the dust of the ground. Well, if it says man out of the dust, and he says, let us form man in our image, then we know that man is an image, his image, man. But Adam here don't get the likeness. And breathed into his nostrils breath of lives, and the man became a living being. That should be soul, or if that's living being, then them animals are not living beings. They're living creatures or something. So anyways, the point of this matter is that he breathed into his nostrils straight out of the mouth, a direct descendant. We'll get into that in just a few minutes, and I'll show it to you. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground Yahweh Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant in the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden, tree of knowledge of good and evil. Of course, we know about the rivers, right? Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Why do you reckon that they would die? Right? Because they would have to be kicked, because he gave a command not to do it, right? I mean, that's what he literally said, do not do it. Whether it's written in his commands, which actually it's in the Torah, because this is one of the first 5 books, which is the Torah, so it is a Torah command. And Yahweh Elohim said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I am going to make a helper for him as his counterpart. Notice that's a little helper, right? And from the ground Yahweh Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whenever the man called each living being, look, see, that's saying that those animals are the same as Adam, and that's not true. They just received breath of lives, or not breath of life, they just received breath, which made them living. That was its name. Now, it's interesting that we've got Adam here, and then all these things made and then brought to him. But those things have already been made, starting with the sea and then the birds, and then we went to the beast of the field, and then man. So this is completely backwards from what it was in Genesis 1. So the man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heavens and to every beast of the field. But for the man there was not found a helper as his counterpart. Now, y'all notice something interesting. None of the fish of the sea were brought to him. Ain't that interesting? But they were told to have dominion over them. Ain't that interesting? So who named the fish of the sea? So Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep. And of course, we know that Eve came, and, they were both naked, and they were not ashamed. Why weren't they ashamed? Well, nobody had told them, right? So we get over here and you read about the Nahash, and you really not going to die, right? And of course, the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes. Now think about something for a minute. She knew she wasn't supposed to eat from it. This tree, I think, that's just this apple, which by the way, it's a pomegranate if you go do some research in Jewish foretell. So And it makes sense if you go look at pomegranate seeds, because they look like ovaries or seeds of a woman. Isn't that interesting? And a tree desirable, look, to make one wise. Now, all this time, and we don't know how long this time is. I mean, it's kind of, we've always been portrayed that she was made, and then, the first thing she did was run over here and do this. And Phil, you know, she knew not to do it. So obviously this conversation was not in a place to where it could happen before, in order where all of a sudden, and the woman saw that the tree was good and evil. Why did she see it? Because for Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened and you shall be like Elohim. Why does that say not like Yahuwah? Why is that? Because he said us. It's the Father working through the Son. So to be like Elohim is to be like the Son, knowing good and evil, right? And the woman saw. So all he did was say that, and all of a sudden she saw that the tree was good, and for it was pleasant to the eyes. Why was it pleasant to the eyes? I mean, do you look at your food and say, "Oh man, that's pleasant to look at"? Do you? The answer to that is no. But you look at the opposite sex or someone that you have desired in a pleasant eye, right? And a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave it to her husband with her, and he ate. Now, the funny part about that, or it's not funny, it says that he was with her. So he stood around and let all this go on, knowing he wasn't supposed to do that. Well, that was real manly. But then it seems odd that then both eyes of both of them were opened and they knew that they were naked. Well, what do you mean they knew that they were naked? Y'all try to profess nothing sexual went on there, but all of a sudden they knew that they were naked. How did they know that? And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin covers for themselves. Now, Eve may not have had boobs yet, if you think about it, because if she was just starting, puberty, as we look at it today, then, there's a point there where boys and girls look the same. And then what happens? Something changes. Well, I'm going to say that this had something to do with the change. But anyways, and they heard the voice of Yahuwah Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. So they have spoken with him if they heard his voice, because of course they follow the word. This is the Son. And Adam and his wife, look, they told Adam, why? That's the first time it's not been called man. And his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahuwah Elohim among the trees of the garden. Not the first time, but they did change it to that. And Yahuwah Elohim called unto Adam and said to him, where are you? And he said, who? Adam. I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so he hid himself. So even if he knew he was naked, why would he hide himself? He was ashamed, but what could he have done that would make him have shame? He was naked before and didn't have shame. Now he is naked and has shame because he's hiding. And he said, who made you know that you were naked? What do you mean made you know? Look at there. Who made you know? Isn't that interesting? How did they make them know? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded that you should not eat? I mean, think about it. Something went on there in a form where all of a sudden they were naked and not ashamed, that now they're naked and ashamed because they hid. And the man said, the woman you gave to me to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate. So she knew she wasn't supposed to, because they gave and he would have taught. Yahuwah Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? So he passed the buck. Watch what she does. And the woman said, the Nahash deceived me and I ate. So nobody's taking account for any of this yet. They're just passing it on down. Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nahash, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life. So just so y'all know, this Nahash was not walking around on all fours. All of y'all that are standing on 2 feet, go crawl around on your belly for a little while. on all fours, like you have been taught that this Nahash is, and see how much punishment it is, and you'll find out it's a bust. This Nahash was pleasant to the eyes. And I put enmity between you and the woman, okay, and between your seed. All right, so this Nahash was obviously something sexy and desirable because now there's a seed involved. And her seed, y'all check that out. Y'all see that capital S right there? Now, this is where the seed war began. Whether y'all want to agree with that or not is not my business. There is a little s seed that belongs to the Nahash that obviously the woman is carrying. And then there is a seed with a capital S that can only refer to the son. And you say, well, yeah, that's speaking about when Mary came. Dude, this is a long way from Mary. And it says between you and the woman. And they say, well, that's because Hawa, Eve, is the mother of all living. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm going to show you why this capital S and this little s is important here in a minute. And he shall crush your head and you shall crush his heel. So obviously there's a seed war here. And there's enmity between them. The woman's seed, which is what gave nutrients to Yahusha. Okay. And then there is a seed that belongs to the adversary, whether y'all want to believe that or not. To the woman, he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. Well, hold on. She hasn't known Adam yet, but already she's going to have conception issues. You say, oh, yeah, well, he knows that she's going to get pregnant. Okay, cool. I get that. I'm not saying nothing about that. I'm just saying, isn't it ironic that women who have babies in like pools and bathtubs and stuff like that really don't use any painkiller and the birth is really easy because they can stand up and just kind of squat and the baby fall out? I'm just saying that plays into a lot of things, okay? But so she's going to have sorrow. I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception, bring forth children in pain. What is this sorrow? And your desires for your husband. So a punishment is to desire a husband, but nothing went on up here with the Nahash and these two different seeds, the little s and the big S, right? Okay, let's see. And to the man, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, you didn't listen to the voice of Yahuwah, the son. You listened to her. And you have eaten of the tree I command you, saying, do not eat of. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. And the ground shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. Correct? Absolutely, that's correct. We know it's correct. Okay? By the sweat of your face you are to eat bread until you return to the ground. Look at here, the sweat of your face you eat bread. This is why you cannot be taxed by the sweat of your brow, because he says that's how you're to live. And if they tax it, then they're depleting you of your bread. For out of it you were taken from dust, you are, and to dust you return. And the man called his wife Hawa. She became the mother of all living. That should be all living beings. Not because, I mean, she's not the mother of the Genesis 1:26 creation. It was a them. It was a totally different creation. That's one of the things we're here to talk about, is who 1:26 was. And Yahuwah the Son, Elohim made coats of skin. So y'all, there are some that teach that this is a sacrifice made, the first one for their sin, but they're kicked out. He don't make a sacrifice and then punish them also. That don't even make sense. And his wife and then dress them. He made coats of skin, made coats. You know how you put like a coat of paint on your house? Huh? Something to protect that? I mean, what do we turn to? The flesh, right? Or the son for the man and his wife, and dressed them. Dressed them, but they'd already dressed themselves. And Yahweh Elohim said, see, the man has become like one of us. Who's like one of us? The Ruach working through the Son. Let us to know good and evil. So the Genesis 1:26 is like us, knowing good and evil. The Ruach working through the Son, the Word. They know how to keep. They become one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also the tree of life and eat and live forever. So Yahweh Elohim sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. He drove the man out. And he placed a cherubim on the east of the garden and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way of the tree of life. Look. So there is a place that exists that Yahuwah, the Son, resides. Because remember, the spirit of Elohim hovered above the water, the Father. If it says there's a spirit of Elohim, where's the form? That's the Son. And so that's why it was the light, those who follow his example, and then the firmament, and then the air, so that separation was where the spirit of Elohim could reside again. And the Son, the form that the Abba works through, the example of the man that us was created out of, Adam was created out of, that's who that is. And he drove the man out and he put a sword there to keep him from coming back to the area in which the Son resides, the Father's place on the earth before he became flesh. Now, y'all get upside down on this, and Adam knew Hawa, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said, I have gained me a man, Yahuwah. But where y'all miss it at is right here. And again, so it doesn't say he knew her again. So she's having twins. She gave birth to his brother Habel. Abel means breath of Elohim. That's why his last name ends in El. His last name don't end in El. So he's not no gift. This is the gift. This is the capital SC that has the enmity between the little s seed. Whether y'all want to believe that or not. Because I'm going to show you here in a minute something that's pretty cool. And Habel became keeper of the sheep, but Cain became tiller of the ground. Now look, and it came to be in the course of time. What do you reckon that course of time was? They came of age, more than likely. So they knew to bring these stuff. They knew that they were to bring the best because they were learning the word. That Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to Yahuwah. He just picked it up off the ground. And Habel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat, the best of. Yahweh looked at Habel and his offering, but he did not look at Cain and his offering, and Cain was very wroth. And his face fell. Okay? Now, if he would have picked up and brought the best, Yahuwah, the Son, the intermediary between all things, and the Father, the light of the world, yes, the light of life. Yahushua says, I am the light of life. Those who follow me shall walk in the light and no longer be in the darkness. The light of life. That's who he is. Genesis 1:3. I've established that numerous times. Numerous times. Genesis 1:1 is the Son. Genesis 1:3 is the Son. The Father saying that the Son's example. That's what Genesis 1:4 is. Behold, I reveal. Strong, powerful leader who is the head of man. Who is that? That's the Son. We've established this, right? All right. So he didn't accept Cain's because he didn't bring the best, right? So what did Cain do? He got upset, he got wroth, and then he rose up against him and killed him. Okay, thou shalt not kill. This could just as easily be and murdered him, because that's what that means. You see, he made sanctuary cities in the Torah because accidents happen. But Cain's wasn't an accident. He was angry in his heart. And so what did he do? He rose up against Habel, the breath of Elohim, the capital S seed. Watch this. And Yahuwah said to Cain, where is Habel, your brother? And what did he say? I do not know. Am I my brother's guard? And he said, what have you done? Well, if he already knew why, he wanted to see what he said. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. To me, that capital letter S, the same as this capital letter M, the seed given to her, their connection, the direct lineage of the Messiah, right? That's why he told us in Genesis 1 when he knew this was going to happen. That's why he said that he would be the coming of the head of man, the strong, powerful leader to die by the destruction of his own hand at the cross sticks. I've established that. He knew that this was going to happen. Because watch this. From the ground, and now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to Yahuwah, my punishment is too great to bear. See, you have driven me from the face of the ground today, and I am hidden from your face. And I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. And it shall be that anyone who finds me kills me. Well, this ain't no brothers and sisters. They're the first two born. This anyone is the Genesis 1:26 creation. And the reason he was feared that is because, well, if anyone kills Cain, vengeance is taken upon him sevenfold. They knew that he would have killed his brother. And they would have known in the likeness of Elohim that that is a transgression and he should be stoned. Or, some sort of way because he killed his brother. He had wrath in his heart, and that's what he done. So Cain went out from his presence and dwelt in the land of Nod, and he goes through all these different things there is. But then we get right down here of where we see this. And so verse 25 says, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Jeth. For Elohim has appointed me, what's this say? Another, look at here, seed, lowercase, instead of Habel, the uppercase, because Cain had killed him. See, y'all try to teach that there ain't no war that went on, but there absolutely was a war that went on, a war that was 100% started right there from the kicking, enmity between your seed and her seed. But he knew this was going to happen. And he knew that he would have to come in the flesh, that his seed, direct line, would not have to do it. He would have to do it himself. That's pretty cool. Now, so we get over here to Genesis 6, and this is where you kind of look at some things and say, I don't know, maybe, we'll see. So it came to be when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, that the sons of Elohim, there are those that teach that this is the good sons of Seth. And I say, okay, well, we've established that the sons of Elohim were there when the foundation was laid for the earth, for they shouted for joy. So the good sons of Seth could not have been when the foundation was laid. So either these are angels, which they are, or if you're going to say that they're man and woman, and the good sons of man and woman, then you're just going to verify what I already know, and that's man and woman was in Genesis 1. So you decide that one. But they saw the daughters of men that they were good, and they took them. So hold on. If these are the bad daughters of Cain and the good sons of Seth, they just took their wives, all of whom they chose. Look at this. So they just went up, took them. They didn't say, hey, do you want to marry me? They said, hey, you're going to marry me. That's what this says. So how good were they? Oh, by the way, well, look here. And Yahuwah said, my spirit, hold up. If there is a spirit of Yahuwah, who is the form of Yahuwah? That's the Son. If you say this is the Father, then you say he has a spirit. And now you say that Yahusha is the Son. You have brought in a Trinity that does not exist. Yahuwah said, my spirit. Go look at Ezekiel 36, 26, and 27. There's you a second witness to Yahuwah and his spirit. He said, I shall put my spirit. Who is speaking there? Yahuwah. He said, I shall put my spirit. What does he say right here? And Yahuwah said, my spirit, the Ruach, shall not strive with man forever in his going astray. He is flesh. and his days are 120 years. And we know that the Nephilim on the earth, and afterwards, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, these are the giants that we know that came, right? And he saw that wickedness of man was in the earth, and every inclination of his thought of his heart was evil continually. So they had no Torah. They weren't even flesh anymore as they were created. And Yahweh was sorry that he had made man in earth, and he grieved in his heart because of the incursion of the angels and how they had defiled their creation, mixing them with man and animals to go against those in his image to try to get back at him for what happened after the war of the angels. And Yahweh said, I am going to wipe off man, whom I have created from the face of the ground, both man and beast, creeping creature, and the birds of the heaven, and I am sorry that I have made them. Why? Because they've all been mixed together. But Noah found favor. Why do you think he found favor in the eyes of Yahuwah? So the genealogy of Noah, Noah was righteous man. Why was he righteous? Because he kept Torah. He's a direct line of Enoch, who walked with Elohim for 300 years, who is a direct line of Adam that only knew the word. He was perfect in his generations. He was perfect in his generations. His sons and him were perfect. Noah walked with Elohim, just like his genealogy of Enoch. And Noah brought forth 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? These are the perfect generations of his. And the earth was corrupt. That word corrupt is abomination before Elohim. And the earth was filled with violence. From this abomination, they were all mixed with everything. And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw it was corrupt, an abomination. And all flesh, how much is all? All flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. So now we're back to the original question I asked at the end of the last video. Where did Shem, because Ham has giants, Japheth has giants, and their wives is how it came through, because we just read that those boys were perfect in their generations. But it says right here, all flesh had been made an abomination their way on the earth, had corrupted their way, had changed what they were. And Elohim said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the entire earth is filled with this violence, this corruption. Through them, and see, I am going to destroy them from the earth. Make yourself an ark of gold for wood, and this is how you'll make it, and where to put the windows, and he's going to bring the flood waters. And I shall establish my covenant with you. And now look right here. There's a lot of people try to teach that the first covenant was with Abraham, but it wasn't. I guess, it would be right here. And of course, this goes all the way back to Adam, the direct lineage. That's the pretty cool part. And you shall come into the ark, you and your sons and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of all the living of all flesh, 2 of each, that's the unclean in the birds. And so he goes through and tells him about doing this. And Yahweh said to Noah, come into the ark, you and your household, before I've seen the righteous before me. I have seen that you are righteous. I have seen that you followed the Torah before me in this generation. See that? See? Why did it say his generation? Well, because that's his offspring. He's righteous of me in this generation. He keeps the Torah outwardly. Of all the clean beasts, take 7 pairs. See, look at there. The birds of the heavens, 7, and 7 more days I am sending rain, 40 days and 40 nights. Noah did according to Yahuwah's command. And look, he was 600 years old. Now, y'all look at that. Noah's 600 years old. There's 1,560 years or 63 or something like that between this. Maybe 1550. But anyways, the moral of the story is that Noah more than likely walked in the time when Adam was still alive. Another reason why he's still righteous. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives went into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Now, you got to keep something in mind. And I'm sure that the people in that area knew about Noah and his family and the ark and all they were building, because you got to realize Methuselah dies, and 7 days later, these all get in the ark, and these sons find them wise. Okay? I mean, that's literally what happens. All right. And on the same day, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the sons of Noah, and Noah's wives, and the three wives of their sons were with him, went into the ark. They and every life form of its kind, and they went into the ark two by two, and those going male and female. And of course, we got the 40 days increase, and the waters mighty, and the waters great, became mighty and 15 cubits high. So look right here. And all flesh died. There are people that teach all that was just, in spirit. No, it says all flesh, right? Remember what Adam became? Living flesh. And the creeping creatures on the earth, and birds and beasts, and swarming creatures, and swarms, and all mankind, all in whose nostrils was the breath of the spirit of life, all that was on the dry land died. So why did they need to designate the ones on the dry land? And why did they need to designate the ones that got the nostrils of the breath of the spirit of life? Huh? The direct lineage. Genesis 1:26 didn't get that, did they? And so why did it need to specify that? Wouldn't it, if this just said that all mankind was wiped off the earth, this whole thing could be just, that should be understood, right? That it was just one mankind, right? That was wiped off the earth, that got the breath, that was on the dry land. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, he did. Except there's one thing. He designated that dry land for a reason. And the reason that he done that goes back to the exact thing that I asked. Where did Shem get his wife? Where did he get the wife that, where did he get the wife that was uncorrupted? Where did she come from? And the answer is pretty simple. If you look at it, he's designating what the dry land is. Those that got the breath of lives from those that did not. Because the ones in the water did not die. I never could figure out how it was when they were mixing all these flesh and animals, how they gave a woman the tail of a fish, and all of a sudden she could breathe underwater. And when you understand who that likeness is, when you understand why that they told you about the dry land dying, the breath of the spirit of life, this is not the likeness. This is not the ones that died in the flood. That's why he said he'll never flood the earth again, because next time he's going to peel the sky back like a scroll, and we all going to live in the water on the earth again, like it was in Genesis 1:1. And that recreation is more than likely the Genesis 1:26 people, the ones created in his likeness, to keep that line pure where Shem got his wife. I'm not saying he went to the waters to get his wife. I'm saying she's on that lineage. And chances are, if she's of that lineage, Mary is probably of that lineage also. Which would make sense if you know now that the fetus is produced by the father, the protector, while the mother gives it the nutrients to let it grow. That is the Son of Man side of him. And the Son of Elohim side would be the protection that made the fetus. More than likely, that might be why they destroy the fetus and give it a AKA birth certificate, though it's in all caps, which stands for something being dead. It's another way for them to maybe get back at the Abba for doing what they done to his son. So I didn't get to go into it as deep as I wanted to. I'm already almost to 40 minutes. But I've given you enough to show you that I'm going to make a part 3 to this. And I'm going to show you that these movies that they're making and these things that they're telling us, there's a show out right now over in Britain. It talks about the war between the sea and the land. And it shows these quote unquote humanoid type figures. They do that to keep us from knowing. Those of you say, dude, get over that, Aquaman. Hey, listen, unless you can come as innocent as a child, you cannot enter the kingdom. And so the things that are grandeur that seem odd to you, lay out in the scriptures. You say there's nobody living in the sea. Part 3, I'm going to show you scripture says that there's somebody there. And there's some things I've already showed you that more than likely that is where Shem's line come from, his wife, to keep that pure line, to keep that giants from coming through. Because Yahuwah played the long game against the adversary so that when he came and they killed him without any transgression, they broke Torah, for the wages of sin is death. And sin is transgression of the law. And since he is the law, then they killed him without no cause. And therefore that gave him superiority over all. He didn't have to separate the light from the darkness anymore. All those that walked with him are now in the lights and no longer walk in the darkness. Our example. So I pray that I see you for the part 3. And I pray that Abba helps you see these things. Go back and watch some of the other videos if I have just gone over your head, because it can be overwhelming. And I get it, but I have repeated it over and over in other videos to help it be understood why I went so fast to make a crash course here, because there's a lot here. So I thank you, Abba, for this opportunity and this time. And I pray in Yahusha's name, I ask you, Abba, our Yahuwah. Thank you for everything, for all things. All that is done through your Son, Yahusha. For in his name I pray. Amen and amen.